A question we often get is, how much can I contribute to a 529 plan? The 529 plan is a really attractive vehicle for education savings, and so I'm going to talk about how much you can put in here. Now, a quick bit about how a 529 plan is set up, because that'll help make this answer make sense. When you open a 529 plan, there's an account owner who has to be a legal adult and a beneficiary. There's no restriction on whether that beneficiary needs to be a child or also a legal adult. So typically what you'll see is that a parent is opening in a 529 plan for a child, where the parent is the account owner and the child is the account beneficiary. Now, any contributions made to that account are considered a gift for tax purposes to the beneficiary on the account. So if you're talking about a household where there are two parents and one child, then in 2020, you would take the annual gift limit of $15,000 per giver-receiver pair and say, okay, each parent can give $15,000 to that child. So $15,000 times the two parents is $30,000 a year being contributed to that child's 529 plan, and you don't have any issue with taxes. Now, that can be repeated across as many beneficiaries as those parents are choosing to contribute to. And another important thing to keep in mind is that 529 plans have a special provision where you can accelerate 5 years of gifting. So in 2020, instead of doing $30,000 for a child, you could multiply that by 5 and instead do $150,000. Now, that means that you've used up your gifting capacity for the next 5 years, unless it goes up over the next 5 years. But one thing you want to do when you think about doing that is look at this tax rules in your state, because some states will say you can roll forward your contributions and take the deduction even in years where you're not actually making a contribution, right? So you could say, oh, I contributed a bunch in 2020 and I'm going to recognize the tax deduction in future years. Other states say, no dice, we're not recognizing that. You have to be cutting a check in order to get the tax deduction each year. And if that's the situation in your state, then you can certainly still work around that, leave yourself capacity to write a check each year and maximize the tax deduction, but you really want to make sure that you're executing on that correctly. And it can be a good idea to work with a professional if that's what you're considering. Now, what's really cool about 529 plans is that they have very high limits on how much you can put in total. Every state establishes their own cap. In most states, there are some exceptions that are lower, but most states are in the 400,000 and change to 500,000 and change ballpark, and that number adjusts up with time to reflect the rising cost of education. Now, what's interesting about that is the number at which you can no longer contribute new money to a 529 plan, but you can just let the account ride. So there's no restriction on how big your 529 account can get, but there is a limit on when you have to stop contributing new dollars.